All right. Well, this is kind of a weird way to kind of start off. The angle of the webcam right here is like not in the proper place. This is weird. Okay. Let me get out up here. Do something a tad bit different since I feel like I kind of gotten a little bit of an idea of creativity here. But what I'm going to do first. Is that I'm going to turn on this and then mute. Cool. So we got 2 people watching right now. Okay, cool. We're going to do 2 things right here. So what I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to give a visual representation from a movie or from a certain song, or well, pretty much we're going to do a song first, and then we're going to do a visual representation of something that was kind of inspired to do the story. That way there's a little bit more going on, and that we have a little bit of some flexibility with some things. Yeah, tone down a little bit on the timing, but you know, we seem to be making good pace and good progress with the story as well. So I figured we'd do something here first. So we are going to do this. I'm going to do that real quick. And my hair is a mess. Here we go. So we're going to start off with the song, and then we'll do a visual representation, and then we will continue on with the story. Right now. Yeah, skip the ad because I don't want that. It's like one of the best songs ever in a video game. Far Away by Jose Gonzalez. Step in front of a runaway train, just to feel alive again. Pushing forward through the night, aching just to go aside. It's so far away. It's so far away. So once this song actually is over, I'll show a visual representation from the video. Cold blows into the skin. Can't believe the state you're in. It's so far away. It's so far away. Who are you trying to miss? Steadily creating this. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So I got that set up. Step in front of a runaway train. Oh, you're almost right there. Pushing forward through the night. Say hi to everybody. Yeah, you guys did the glove. Just above my side. Aching just above my side. Aching just above my side. I'm gonna link that to you. There we go. Still got 2 minutes before the song ends. So. Step in front of a runaway train, just to feel alive again. Pushing forward through the night, just above the sight. Aching just above the sight. Aching just above the sight. All right. So Far Away by Jose Gonzalez. Very, very good song. If you played Red Dead Redemption 1, the first one, it's one of the most amazing scenes when you cross over into the country of Mexico on your horse and you're riding along a very long journey path to a place you've never been before, and then out of nowhere, that song comes on and it makes the ride majestic, intriguing, powerful, ambient, and just masterful. When I first played, like, I never expected that, really. You know, when you're playing that game, it was actually a good song to listen to when you're traveling through the unknown areas of Mexico. So it's one of the reasons why I picked that song. But Mexico, though, is not in the first story or the second story I have planned. That's technically in the third story that I was actually going to write. But we got to get to the second story before we do before we do the third. So with the music now playing, we're actually going to play a little clip of something I was inspired by, and yes, you're going to hear it too. So what I'm going to do right here, and I should probably get the tripod for this one here, so that way you guys can actually see what's going on. Pardon me. I'm going to stick that right on top of here, because what I am going to do is that I am going to... Sorry, if this spins, forgive me, but I'm trying to get it on. Oh, no, there we go. I'm supposed to, like, twist it like this. Never mind. There we go. We got the tripod thing working now. So here's what we're going to do. See, that's actually a much better way I can actually show it without having to hold it with the hand. Sorry, this thing's a pain in the butt sometimes, but I think it gets the job done. Here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off. Oh, sorry, it's not the finale I want to do, it's the final duel. This is another scene that's really inspired me to do the second story too, but I want to just show this particular moment in the story. The Good, Bad, and the Ugly Final Duel. Movie made in 1966. Along with Clint Eastwood.
You wanted to be killed. When'd you unload it? Last night. You see, in this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, and those who dig. You dig. When?
Okay, so that's what I'm probably going to be doing from this point. Whenever time I'm about to actually start that story, I'm going to show you more bits and pieces of things that got me into doing that sort of thing. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and adjust the camera back, make it easier. Coolio. Detected copyrighted audio and video in your stream. Your stream, maybe. I don't give a crap, okay? I just want to read my story. I don't care if I'm making a cent off this or not. So, coolio. So now that we are pretty much good with pretty much the video and audio of that, let us continue on. And now let us get us caught up from part 2. Now, from part 2, we pretty much went through a bit of things right here. Let's go right over to recap a bit. So as it turns out that Vulture himself pretty much has stumbled upon Mr. Han Burton's secret, that he actually has a lover of his own, and pretty much he would use that information to his own advantage. Before that, Han Burton had taken the life of a rancher, his wife, and family. Of course, however, though, that does not mean that he had any pleasure in doing it. It became something that became of a bitter means or a bitter action to him, that he starts questioning his actions in terms of what Massacre and his gang actually do. Other than that, pretty much his relationship is still strong as ever with Amelia. However, though, Vulture has now discovered the secret behind his relationship with Amelia. And also to that fact, in addition, Han Burton pretty much returns to Massacres, and he digs up the secrets that he himself was in fact raised by these killers because they had murdered his mother and father. They lied to him. That he said to, or Massacre said to Han that he was abandoned by his family, which in case was not true. When he was raised by the people that murdered his family, and he was originally left to die and abandoned, but out of reluctance, they pretty much raised him only in the condition that it was Granger, Massacre's sister, who would raise him. But unfortunately, she was never kind of the mother to the person, so he kind of grew up feeling a little bit more bitter in life. So let me go ahead and just make sure I'm... Yes, so I've read that part already, because he basically goes to the journal and he does all that. Okay, so I pretty much stopped at the part where she mentions in the journal that she admitted, along with her brother, who is also known as Roscoe, Roscoe being the original name for Massacre, being that there was also a list of people who also went by these code names, and also figuring out that the main character, Lobo, or Han Burton, was born in what? I believe the year was 1809. Yes, 1809, October 17th. So he finds a little bit more about his past out from reading these sort of secrets, which Jokester himself had foreshadowed and was right about despite his betrayal. And basically, that's what it means. All right, so we are going to continue off. We're going to read as much as we can before we get the stream ended, but it's only about 19 minutes, so we still have a bit of time. I couldn't believe what I had just read. My heart was bouncing in every direction. Everything I was told and taught since I had been with them. They lied. My own mother and father. Taken from me. Murdered and then manipulated me into thinking they had abandoned me. Everything in me felt shattered. Again, I was a bad man, but it even felt severe and almost deathly. The severe anxiety and the intense grip of a broken man's heart. I fell victim to tragedy, manipulation, and to this bastard's deceit. I closed the journal and tossed it back to where it was and ran out of Massacre's palace through another door that led out. Without any hesitation on where to go, I ran as far away from Silver Rock, where I was just a bit of a dot in the distance. I knew sooner or later I would have to go back, but for my personal duration, this new feeling of turmoil and anger began to consume me. All these goddamn years of being a puppet or cannon fodder for such a cruel man. I knew he didn't like me, but a part of me thought that he at least respected me throughout the years. I pledged my life and loyalty to that man, even Granger herself. But no secret within my broken heart But it was no secret within my broken heart that I hated the both of them. The anger within me began to ignite this inferno inside. I had to let it all out. I began to yell my cry of tragedy to the sky, where I could only hear my own echo that yelled back. Truthfully, the more I looked around, I paused and I noticed that it was just me standing alone with no one here. That was the truth about my life. I was always alone, no matter who I was with. 26 years of my life, and the moment that comes to realization. But it would be a time I would have to confront Massacre. But I stayed to somewhat kindle a sense of comfort from the only two people that I could trust, Jackie and Amelia. Jackie, a kid like me who's lost a father and life turned astray to carelessness of the world. Amelia, the only woman who pulled me out from who I was, even if it wasn't all still enough for me to wake up and see that it was clearly to me who I was and who I saw. I even saw myself as my own worst enemy, and even the thoughts of every past went straight into my mind. The men that I've killed, the pain I have inflicted, and the wrong that I have done. I clenched my fist once again, and then realized as I remembered what Amelia had told me. I still love you, Burton. I just don't want anything to happen to you. But I realized it wasn't me she needed to worry about. It was me having to worry about what would happen to her. I mounted and rode back into town, now trying to disguise my venomous fury and bound hatred for Massacre. But for the time being, I played along with ignorance and naivety to my safeguard to myself. But this time, that all I had ignored or turned away, it all came back, including the tragedy that I lived. I could no longer turn my back or my attention away from it all now. Lobo, yelled out Vulture. Me and the boss need you and the boys. Round 'em up and meet us in the palace." I nodded and pretended to respectfully acknowledge his order, but then I whispered to myself in disgust, "You goddamn atrocious, filthy leech." I marched to our camp and yelled out, "Everyone! Boss needs us! Let's go! Immediately!" Everyone rallied inside and seated as the ladies were dismissed back to the big room. "All right, everyone. Me and Vulture were given complete cooperation from our new member, Hound, about the gold that was taken by the law. Fortunately for all of us, we now know where that gold is hidden. It's hidden just a few miles from here in some small province of a town called Dent, within a bank. Truth is that this can only be a four-man job, and Hound himself will definitely be a part of this robbery, as a test of loyalty and worth, since the information has been proven to be very reliable, thanks to our friends in the law. The robbery will begin tomorrow, so in a few hours we will reconvene here, and I'll pick our 3 nominations to help steal back this gold." We were dismissed as Massacre went back to his chamber. It was there that he stepped right into something that didn't feel right. He was onto the suspicion that somebody was in his quarters. His eyes and nose and attention felt sharp and cautious as a dog sensing danger. He poked around looking to see any changes that were caused, and he noticed some of his money was gone. Angered, but still looking over, he went into his office and shuffled around his furniture until he had made the notice of a mistake that I would bitterly regret till the end of my days. He saw the journal on the edge of the desk, and he opened it up and realized some creasing was on the page about me that I had read. He figured it out right then that it was me. He scratched his chin and looked out the window to see me talking to Jackie. Massacre marched down the stairs and ordered one of his girls to summon Vulture. He and his brother-in-law were in the back of his office in a matter of seconds. "Boss, what seems to be bothering you?" Vulture asked. Massacre sat in his office chair and placed his elbows on the surface and folded his hands and stared at the middle of his desk. "I think he knows, Vulture." "Who are we talking about, boss?" Massacre looked up at him and spoke menacing, though not directly at him, but still to where the light of fire couldn't be put out. "Lobo. He knows everything now." Vulture paced back and forth to think about how to put Massacre at ease. What should we do? Should we kill and be done with it? Or have somebody else take care of it? Massacre shook his head and responded, "No, not yet anyway. He's still of use to us. I want him to rob that bank with Hound, and I'll send Gamble and Boomer as well. That'll keep him away from me for the time being. Tell me, Vulture, the day you and Lobo were arguing, what was it that you discovered again?" Vulture smiled wickedly from his despicable mouth and tattled my secret to him. "Well, I do know something that he has a personal sweetheart down in El Marico. Her name, Amelia or something. Doesn't matter. What does matter is that this woman has been making him soft. She's obviously his weakness, and maybe even the reason why he's softening up or even yet starting to poke his nose into things." Massacre leaned back in his chair while he raised his hands and began while raising his hand and flipping it to where you could see his palm. "Do we know what this Amelia lady is?" "Oh, absolutely, boss. Made a personal trip myself, and I think it's close time I see her again anyway. Got some urges to release." "Very well, Vulture. A reminder, though, my sister may have passed, but if you were still married to her and said that in front of me, I would have shot you, or you wouldn't be able to fuck a woman in this town ever again. Still, you wouldn't do such a thing. This Amelia is mine to handle, you understand?" Vulture's facial expression changed from a horny rat-faced Neanderthal to a bummed but nervous coward of a man. "Yes, boss, I understand." I immediately walked over to Jackie as I felt the situation was growing direly. It was clear to me that Jackie and I were just disposable pawns to Massacre. All my life I was just getting my hands dirty for Massacre. The pain that I endured and inflicted was for him and the gang, but not once ever was I tended or reached to for my own suffering. Jackie listened to me close, but I feared that we may have been deeper than what we had realized. "What do you mean, Burton?" Jackie whispered. "Everything I've done for this gang and everything that Massacre did was all built on lies. He did it, Jackie. He murdered my father, and he murdered my mother, and he had help from his own sister, Granger. You remember the one I told you about at the saloon? Yeah, I remember. So what happens now? To be honest, Jackie, I'm not sure. I found some money though, but it's not much for even $1,000. But you and me, along with Amelia, well, we need to figure a way out as far away from here as humanly possible. For now, we play dumb and go along with what they're doing for a short duration. Any money that you make, just make sure you've saved and stashed it. Before I could even finish talking to Jackie, I was interrupted by Vulture's pestering call to make me talk to Massacre. Lobo boy, the boss wants a word with you in his office. I nodded and walked back, but secretly inside my heart was racing, and Jackie himself felt uneased from the tension that was going on. Vulture followed from behind and walked up to the stairs with me. As I entered his office, I saw Massacre writing in the same journal that I had discovered. He looked over at me and stared because he had known what I had done, but he wouldn't open up about any of it. He too played my move by playing ignorance to anything happening. A cunning move, but a deadly and consequential outcome that would follow. Lobo, I brought you here because I need you along with Hound, Gamble, and Boomer to rob this bank, while me and the rest of the gang handle a bit of last-minute business with a few local merchants farther west. Getting this all done would be beneficial for all of us. These people we are robbing are just some vile and wicked and as even Dust Devil and his vile crew. In fact, we'd be doing the world a favor. Not that I care as much, but the way I see it, you'd be my killing machine, and it would be most pleasing if I had my gold possessed back. I looked at the journal for a brief moment, trying my hard to give an answer without giving too much knowledge away. Sure, boss, but you think this time we can just rob the place without killing people? Maybe we don't know if they're truly are or not, boss. Massacre right then and there creepily changed his tone, from a boss giving orders to a menacing alteration of his voice. You dare question my orders, boy. Don't irritate me or make me upset, understand? I spoke back. I spoke back by I spoke back in a way that I had to throw back. I understand, all right, but I'm just saying that maybe killing isn't absolutely necessary. I don't have any problem getting your goal. Then, out of the blue, Massacre, enraged, slammed his hands on the desk, yelling and roaring out of line, "You will do as you're goddamn told." Instantly, anger began to swell in me, even though I was afraid, but still I began to protest back at him. You know, I've been meaning to ask you, why do you treat me and the boy like filth and shit on the bottom of your shoes? You know I've done so much for this gang, yet you always look down at me as nothing but a used bullet to be thrown away. What about all those other people you told me to kill, huh? Like the ones on the farm you claimed were loyalists? What about the people on the train, or the people that you had me hunt down over the years? Were they bad people, huh? Tell me. Roscoe expressed his rage intensely that it was too insufficient for him to even complete a sentence, but immediately he calmed himself and stared at me. What do you want me to say? I evenly matched my voice to his as we both calmed ourselves. I want the truth, boss. Those people I killed over the years, were they innocent or were they not? Massacre closed his eyes and slightly bent himself, holding the desk, putting one of his most treacherous and disgusting faces I had ever seen in my life, and whispered, They knew the consequences, and they all had it coming, Lobo. The rules apply to them as well as this gang. Now, please, I need you to do this job and do exactly what I instruct you to do. Inside of me, I wanted to pull out my guns and kill the both of them, but I couldn't because my own suspicion of Vulture was that he always aimed a gun behind my back whenever an argument conjured between me and the boss. In my mind and in my heart, I finally learned everything. I spoke the words inside my mind. God damn you, Massacre, you treacherous, evil, manipulative, exploitive piece of unholy shit. But externally, my mouth spoke hollow. I'll do this job for you, no problem. It was there Massacre nodded his head, but gave such a sarcastic and irritable remark. It's wonderful to see that you're finally on board. Hopefully you can change that tone of yours, and as well as that soft heart, it causes weakness. Cat was kind of like, in the middle of my story. So pretty much to summarize this part is that Lobo himself has discovered the truth, and he's bitterly angry about it, and he pretty much had to let out his frustrations in his hatred in a matter where no one can actually see or hear him. But he goes back because he's summoned by Vulture, and Massacre now knows that Lobo knows. And so, being that his usefulness is almost coming to an end, he decides that Lobo should be the guy to rob the bank along with the other three. But Lobo himself is the expendable one at this part because, again, he knows that Massacre knows, or Massacre knows that Lobo knows. And he can't have that, and he also knows that Massacre is now aware of the secret that he has about a love of his life that's giving him a softened heart, and he doesn't like that. So now he sends him on this job, and this is where things are going to kind of unfold a bit. For me, I didn't know what he truly meant by it. I was only so sure that Vulture knew of my secret, but so did Massacre. Fate itself seemed to be slowly closing in, but how soon would it get here? All Massacre ever did was disparage me, and he was abysmally impudent of all the hardships I go through for him. And damn him to hell for taking my past, my parents, and my life away. He impolitely waved his hand to the right to dismiss me. Get out of here. Tomorrow you and the three ride out in the morning. I walked out not saying a word and slightly had a face-off look with Vulture as he kept his weapon holstered. Slowly I knew I was coming close to being disposable, but not until later when they would do something even worse. I laid in my bed looking up to the top layer of my tent, contemplating the moments I might have left. I couldn't make out escape alone. It would take all three of us, me, Jackie, and Amelia. I grew somewhat tired and fell into deep sleep, but even there my own troubles and fears followed me into the realm of slumber. I remember the nightmare that flooded the skies with dark storms of rain, thunder, and lightning, like the fury of God striking the earth with such an unfathomable force of his smite to mankind. I was covered in rain as I rode away from gunfire. Each shot seemed to pierce closer to me the more I moved. Then my horse neighed with such agony as the bullets began to pierce through the nag's heart. I had no time but to check on the steed as the group of masked men were chasing me through the pouring rain and in the woods, where the familiarity of where I'd been before presented to me right before my nightmare had peaked to where it had been Vulture who had been chasing me. Gonna do a slight pause real quick and then I'll get right back onto you. Right there. Cool. So essentially, he had a bad dream, and that bad dream feels like it might be more foreshadowing. Okay, cool. I closed my eyes to endure the sharp end of his bullet that I believe would have claimed my life. But as I opened them from within, my dream was something that would change my mood of everything. At first it was quiet as I stood in the middle of a dead end, before a mountain that was enormously curved around me. In between was a small round pond with a tree that stood under a mysterious light that gracefully shined like heaven. Remarkably, what drew out of that shining ray was the same looking wolf that looked into me from the distance. Silence remained blanketed over me, and the wolf, as it continued to look into the dead center of my eyes. Unlike what Massacre and his sister experienced was such a hostile yet defensive creature, this wolf stood in front of me to see as its closed eyes and slowly faded back into the light. No harm, no hostility, or any danger it showed. It was something that I couldn't understand. But immediately, I was awakened by Gamble, who along with Boomer and Hound began readying themselves for the robbery. I too got dressed and equipped, but the thoughts of the wolf came back to me. It had to have meant something because the same feeling and aura was something that I had remembered before. Not even my own senses could deceive me when I witnessed something that feels extraordinarily supernatural. But then my thoughts of infinite hatred and disdain for Massacre took over, but my eyes were not distracted from what I needed to do. playing Massacre's game until he was satisfied. It was only a few hours later that as all four of us had rode into Dent and stashed our horses into the back of the bank where no soul could witness our scheme. It was before we made our move that we wandered around separately to observe the flow of traffic, of town's population, and where the law had operated. I managed to locate the sheriff's building as Gamble took note of the number of people passing by. We took about 30 minutes of wandering to get a feel and an escape plan on check. Then we regrouped behind the bank and placed our hats and bandanas on. I kept a blue-colored one for my black leather hat. Blue and black seemed like colors for an intimidating outlaw like me. Especially my brown long hair and goatee seemed to go well with it. The clock struck 11 as we put on our disguises and barged into the bank. I held my rifle as the others had their pistols. Hound, on the other hand, held a semi-automatic shotgun to keep a few of our bank guests busy to the ground. With it, as I went in and demanded the manager to unlock the safes, Gamble and Boomer gathered to the flock of people into the corner, giving Hound and I time to exert pressure on the manager. "Open the damn safe!" I menacingly demanded. He began pulling the knob for the first safe as he shook and panicked. The first one had been open, which made Hound drag the manager to the office for the gold as I emptied the first vault. "Hurry up, or there will be blood spilled." The manager frantically kept turning the knob, but as everyone was too distracted by the trio holding everyone in high deathly situations, I grabbed most of the cash and a bag that I had kept. $25,000. But it was more like 20,000 since I snuck 5,000 in the lower inner pocket of my jacket, which now became $6,000 in my possession from the previous money that I had. I tossed the bag to Gamble and joined Hound as the manager had finally opened the second safe. Hound threw the poor bastard at the crowd to get in first, and I, next, had followed. And there it was, all the gold shining before us, the biggest fortune that I had ever seen compared to every robbery that I've ever committed, and every treasure and coin stolen. Hound looted and left half the room as I looted the right, but there was still much to take. I swapped places with Gamble first, then Hound switched with Boomer to prevent people from making any sudden or foolish movements. After everything I discovered, I didn't want anyone to die, so I spoke out. "Everyone remain still. The sooner we get what we came for, the quicker we can all leave and you can all go about your day. No one needs to die over anything foolish. Just stay seated on the floor and we'll be gone soon." Second by second increasingly became more intense as the people outside could see the situation unfold within the bank. I could even hear someone yell, "There's a robbery just right outside," as they ran for help. Gamble and Boomer's slow pace of gathering the gold was not only costing us time, but our chances of escape. "Hurry up, you two! People outside know what's going on!" But to even irritate me further was when I felt them ignore what I had yelled out. Because they didn't care. Just like Massacre and Vulture and Granger, they never really cared about me. But finally, after what felt like such a wasted time had passed, through it was some stale miracle that they had finally got the rest of what we needed. With frustration rising, I had yelled out, "What the hell took you jackasses so long?" Gamble only responded with so much of a smug look on his face, but gave such an odd answer to comprehend. "We got nothing to worry about. The law ain't gonna do anything to us. We're just as invincible as God is against mankind." I knew mostly what he was trying to do. He was only attempting to discombobulate me and my words of warning, brushing my frustrations off like it was just some peck of dust on his coat. He was no different from anyone else I ran with. But Hound, as I've seen, felt nervous, but determined to get the job done. You couldn't see his expression underneath the cloth of his bandana, but I could see it right through. My eyes were never dimmed to his appearance. In some ways, he too was like Jackie. We all got what we had needed to please Massacre. The gold was ours for the taking, and we were all about to leave the bank until Gamble would do most illogical and atrocious thing that a man could do. Senselessly, and out of a cold-hearted spite, drew out his pistol and killed a man, shielding a woman behind him. The unneeded and vile act of pleasure slaughtering enraged me to the core of my soul as I approached him, roared against his vile intents. "Why did you do that? There was no need to kill a defenseless man. He was no threat." But Gamble ignored me, and all of us ran out only to be surprised by the law down the road, riding towards us. Swiftly, all due haste, we ran into the back of the bank and rode as our horses and fled the town as quickly as we could through our chase that had felt everlastingly forever, then never ending as an illusion of limbo, and that had went on. But the bullets that flew by missed us. It only motivated us to speed our horses up, to flee the capture or the possibility of imminent death by the blow of a pistol. But there we noticed just up ahead was a giant basin that had two openings with paths that led in different directions. Me and Hound took the right, as Boomer and Gamble took the left. It wasn't until I had realized we had precisely 12 officers of the law on our tail, persistent of the apex predator after its prey. Desperation fueled me to escape, for it wasn't just failure that I had feared, but the horrors of punishment that massacre would inflict. Death would be mercy for me, but even I myself feared death, so I could not even fail, even if I came to despise massacre. For now, I was an unwilling slave to his games. We heard shots fire long ways on the other side, but it was there where the path had a few feet down from the far height of the cliff. Our horses leapt down and turned, and that's when we noticed a small cave that would fit us into hiding. We rode in as we saw half of the law leap down and rode towards away from us. Hound, like Jackie, but unlike the rest of the gang, checked up on me to make sure I wasn't shot. "You okay, partner?" he politely asked. "Yeah, I am. Thank you. Appreciate that someone at least in our gang gives a damn, especially one that comes from a gang we killed." Before we could even speak any further, we saw an open gap, a trench that led to the other side of the basin. We both rode inside, with Hound following me through as we continued to hear the loudness of bullets banging. The loud wind clapping with thunder. We made it out trying to figure out where the other two were. We couldn't accept them as dead because of the rest of the gold that the boss needed. He would have killed us if it meant getting his gold. His insatiable and obsessive desire for this only has blood stained upon it by the rivals we killed and an innocent man who was murdered for no reason. Even the money we stole, that was all for him. But little I took was what I needed to escape. Again, the sounds of hellfire rose again, and the echoes through the trenches of the basin. The bodies of the law had fallen out of the way as both Boomer and Gamble raced through the obstacles that were corpses of horses and officers that laid lifelessly in the hot, irritating dirt. They rode closer to regroup, and they laughed vilely as they relished the evil they had done. I rode closer to Gamble and again raised my anger to him once again. "You must be one dumb, sadistic, cock-sucking son of a bitch. You took a man's life over nothing. There was no reason to do that. Why? Why did you think that it was okay? Are you completely ignorant to reality?" Gamble pointed and regarded his actions in such an unconvincing point of arguing, as much as his answer was more of an ill-founded and more based upon his blind loyalty. "Those people don't deserve life. They live the life of unfair luxury while we live like dogs. In their collars and leashes. We suffer too much. Them ain't decent people, Lobo. We rid the world of true filth." I objected to his claim, as I heard enough. "You preach the same damn thing that Massacre has been filling our heads with. It's the same thing I keep hearing and hearing. It's bullshit, Gamble, and you know it as well." And he protested back. "Quit your moaning, you spineless woman." Gamble jumped down my throat. "We don't have time to listen to your cowardly words. We got the gold to deliver." He rode past as I flipped as he flipped his middle finger off at me. His discourteous gesture of his finger made my hatred grow ever so stronger. I wanted to kill him for what he had done, but then I had remembered that I felt that I was different. I too had killed so many innocent people, even if it was all based off of Massacre's lies. I was still the monster that he made me. I lived like a monster, and I felt deep inside my heart that I would die as one, and that no hope would ever change, no matter how far I would run or how much I would be willing to change. All four of us ended up journeying our way back till we saw Sheriff Trover, along with his two moronic disciples. Both Gus and Porter were faces I wished to had never seen again. "You boys reclaimed the boss's gold?" asked Sheriff Trover. Hound responded nonchalantly before them. Yes, sir, we did. I believe Massacre will be enjoying himself now that we have it, and we bring the riches of his money as well. All of us placed the gold and the sack of money into a wagon that both his deputies rode in, as Trover was solo on his horse, as he would join us on a ride that I would forever remember, infamously to the memory of my life. Gus and Porter would you be so kind to stash these goods at the station until our dear exalted boss returns? Will do, sir, will do. Gus spoke in such a deep southern drawl accent. Both rode back as we all grouped as five, and then news came to me from the so-called sheriff. Well, boys, it seems some urgent business in El Marico. The rest of your gang is hiding out just outside of there. Boss said something about hearing the law planning to raid our beloved town of Silver Rock, and so requests everyone to meet there. He said for us to meet him there in the middle of town. I couldn't believe what I had heard. I felt my heart nearly fall into the pit of my stomach, but I couldn't compromise any sign of weakness. We all rode, but the closer we were was the more I was worried and on alert. It took a decent amount of time. All I could do was think about trying to get there before anyone else. I had to get to Amelia and to get her out of there. There was really nothing else more important. There was nothing more else more important to me than her being all right. Sheriff Trover took the lead as the town was just in the peak of sight. All right, boys, when we get there, start dismounting just outside because we're going to be walking in from there. And we're going to separate out to avoid suspicion. Finally, we had made it, and just with my own speed, I immediately got off my horse, but walked to the side of town, being wary of any danger. But it was this moment here where I began to notice foul play. Signs of deceit, trickery, and puddles of blood, as death and corpses of the town littered from the side that I was searching. I grew anxious and walked faster, looking and just hoping to God she was all right. But no chance, because she was nowhere to be seen. As I recalled, that she stayed with the El Marico officers. So I ran towards the houses near the stations, but I had realized that the station itself was now just an exhibit of death just inside. The law's throats were slit by the flash of a particular blade, all done by one man. And a man that I all know too well who would kill all these officers without any help from his goons. Massacre himself was behind this, but it didn't answer my question. Where is Amelia? It was ultimately clear to my knowledge that he knew. But again, I started searching, but to all of my surprises, the loudest of silence as I looked out the window to see Massacre and his gang all lined up and staring directly at me, cold-hearted and steadily holding the urge to fire at me. But the dead silent moment to where I looked with such fear and unbelievable distress is when I saw my beloved Amelia captured by Vulture and held in his hideous grasp, while Massacre held a knife to her neck. Jackie was on both of his knees, with his hands on his head, with Gamble's gun held right behind him. On the ground was our poor dog and best friend Fenrir, who was laying lifelessly on the ground with a bullet wound to the heart. Hound was the only one standing in the line who seemed very uneased by the situation, and had held his rifle somewhat up. I guess he too at least respected me. The gig was up. My secret revealed, my biggest pain that would forever bleed my heart, that was once stone. Slowly, with both my arms raised, I walked out of the sheriff's building and stood in front of Massacre's firing squad. For the moment, Massacre took his personal sharp knife off of Amelia to focus his attention on me, leaving Vulture to completely contain her. Lobo, 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 he disappointedly spoke. You think you can keep secrets from me? You do realize any woman that anyone in this gang finds that they go through me first. But I believe that this matter goes beyond that. I've seen that you've gone through some of my history when you ransacked my quarters. Lobo, you ignorant child. You have no idea what I'm gonna put you through. Haha, I'm willing to bet all of this gold and money that you got from me that you, Lobo, are too terrified to do anything about it. He was right. I think I misspelled this part right here, so forgive me. He shook his head as I heard him in the laughter, along with everyone else, at the way I was feeling. My right hand was shaking, not just out of fear of pain that I was going to ensue, but what would happen to Jackie and Amelia in front of me. It was already heartbreaking to see Fenrir killed, a good loyal dog killed by an evil degenerate tyrant and his group of Western Mongoloids. But then my own personal fire of hatred and anger began to burn within, and my shaking hands fell down as I made a tightened right fist. I was done being afraid. Let her go, Roscoe, I growled. Oh, Lobo, you dare address me by that name? You're nothing but a low-end disposable piece of trash. You're a monster no different than me. You're right, boss. You are indeed right. I am a monster. But the true monster here is you, for you made me for what I am, and you killed my own mother and father. And yes, I know the truth now, Roscoe. Release Amelia and Jackie now. Massacre just laughed. He just laughed on as he walked back over to Amelia and despicably stroked her chin. Such a shame, Lobo. Before he could even commence his act of killing, out of the blue, an officer jumped out with a few bullets, all missed except for the one that hit Gamble's gun right out of his hand, forcing everyone to flee. But at least Jackie was free to run to me. Massacre had tossed his knife to Vulture and tightened his grasp on her as the gang was now attacked by few surviving officers that had chased us from the bank. Me and Jackie together fired against them. Chaos spread as the bullets and yelling was all that had been for any sign of life. No one had yet died until the moment as I was firing, when I had no idea that the corrupt Sheriff Trover was behind me with his shotgun, and he yelled out, "Coward!" before aiming at me. Unfortunately, his timing became his ultimate downfall. As he was about to pull the trigger, he was instantly shot in the head by none other than Jackie himself. His first kill was on a man who was consumed with abusing the responsibility of keeping law and order. This I could say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jackie had every right to do what he did, not out of hatred or spite for his enemy, but for saving a close friend's life. Trover was dead. Still, I immediately told Jackie to flee, and not to argue as I gave him a few $1,000s. I can't leave you behind, Han. I have to stay and help. But I refused. No, brother. Don't risk your life now. You still have a chance to make it. Please, run as far as you can. Find civilization far away. Start over, please. Just do it for me. That is not a request. That is an order, my brother. Jackie nearly cried out as he felt this was our last move to see one another. From one brother to another. You're a good kid, Jackie. You're a good human being. That is what the world needs. You're the hero that this world needs, not me. I was never one. Now go and ride on. Jackie ran to his horse and galloped away. I was beneath the thundering bullets of every shot that was flown. I love you very much, brother. As far as east is from west. The moment sunk in and passed as I ran back to find Amelia, and there I saw Vulture. I ran up and confronted him to let her go, but he had a few words to say. Isn't this funny? Isn't this just funny? Isn't it, Lobo? Jokester had Jackie hostage, and now it happens again with me and your woman here. Don't think for a second you can out me like you did Jokester. I can see right through you and your own gunslinging methods. Just one move and she dies. He began to slightly press the blade against her neck. Okay, Vulture, just kill me instead and let her go. If you want to torture me, then by all means, but just let her go. He began to laugh maniacally at what I had offered. Amelia spoke her words against the slight pressure of the blade. Han, I love you very much. I'm scared. Please help me. I couldn't help but feel more weakened by my love's cry for help. Let her go, I demanded. But he took a few steps back and stared into my eyes with that evil and sadistic smile. as he slashed across Amelia's throat and dashed away, laughing hysterically by the unspeakable pain and tragedy he inflicted within me and to my soul. I watched in saddened terror as she fell to her knees, bleeding out. I ran over as quickly as I could to hold her in my arms as she began to succumb to the reality of loss. And I misspelled this. I began to succumb to the reality of loss and true affliction of true torture. She began to suffocate from the wound as she was trying to speak her dying breath to me, as I was breaking into a heartbroken set of tears. She placed her hand on my cheek, on my face, as I softly grasped it within my hand, and within moments she slowly slipped away from life. Another sound of silence blanketed over me, as the bullets between the law and the gang had continued to break out. Death had finally taken her now. I was left heartbroken and tormented as I held her lifeless body, hugging her as tears had fallen from my eyes. I was a cold-hearted man who grew out of a hardened heart by a woman who changed the way that I was, but now with her gone I felt completely broken. Her and Fenrir both taken from me. It was unfair, but I knew I couldn't stick around any longer, for I slowly laid her down. Gamble saw me and attempted to fire multiple shots directly at me from his pistol. I had to mourn in sorrow later as I ran from my horse and rode away. But I was now being followed by Massacre and Vulture through the stretch of the wilderness. They shot and shouted at me, looking to unhinge me in a way they could find. You should have been eaten by those wolves, Lobo. That's why I named you after them. Lobos are nothing but cowards that hide in such shadows. Lobo, the coward of the West. I dared not listen, as I cared much more about missing every bullet that was fired. But in such a mysterious graces, the law had flanked both Vulture and Massacre, and such chaos and gunfighting caused them to retreat while I was being tailed. Their fate to me was left unknown and ambiguous, but overall now irrelevant for now. For I was all alone, but I needed to keep riding. But little did I have any idea I was heading up north. Eventually, I rode up for days, and up through the state of Oklahoma, through the open plains up to the gracelands of Kansas. It became a never-ending ride to take, but at times I would stop finding vegetation and plants to feed the horse. Still, I had to save my morning till I was in a place much farther away from the Massacre's dystopian utopia. We as a gang rode as far as Georgia at one point, which only took a day or two, but for me I continued to ride on until I made it up to the cornfields of a gray-colored sky of Nebraska. I stopped again and gathered as much corn as I could for myself and for the poor horse that has been through so much with me, as we rest for an hour or so eating next to the fields. My hunger was satisfied, but not my thirst for water. But luckily, the next field was a small bank of water that I saw. I took out my big flask and filled it up while bringing my loyal stew over for a drink. And again, I began stocking up on corn for us both, as I felt like I was almost where I needed to go, despite me not knowing exactly where I was supposed to go. What would it matter to me anyway? I wasn't lost, where in fact there was nowhere for me to go, but away from the pain. But anger and absolute hatred began to come into place and curse my heart as I fell into to my knees and placed my fists to the ground in despair. But a few seconds passed and I immediately mounted on my horse, saying to myself, no, not now. I have to keep riding further. So again, I continued up to the North Pass, past the cold wind that had pushed in my direction, the depression of the cold wind and the dark gray skies. I felt it appropriate to what I was feeling underneath my anger, loss, torment, tragedy, betrayal, and the true feeling of being alone. And again, this is what my life truly was. All alone in the end, no matter what, or who you befriend, who you love, or who you trust. In the end, it's just you living life alone. And when the time comes, death in the end would be there to ferry you from the lonely life that you lived. Hell, I even think that I'd forever be alone in the abyss after death. I didn't believe in anything or a higher power. But that was then. All I had was a woman who loved me, parents that gave their life for me, a loyal dog that was taken away too soon, and a kid who had been like a brother to me, now forced to run far away. What was I to do now since I was exiled? I believed what Massacre had said. I was a coward, or so what I was convinced of. I needed a change of environment, not of a place to run from my mistakes and the wages of my sins, but to find some deeper meaning. But at the time of riding to the north, I began losing faith in myself. As I had finally made it to the state of South Dakota, I began to slow my horse down as I felt that this was a place I could dwell. But only the thoughts of my transgressions and failures that I could ever dwell upon was all that I had. What I had believed, no matter how far I would go, that I could never escape all the wrong that I had done. Even the chill in the wind had reminded me so much that it even felt like a bitter taste in my mouth. A bit cold, yes, but it was different from the wilderness. More fields, but there were more mountains of snow that stood proudly in the distance. But for a broken vessel of a man who saw such sights had nothing to be proud of, because I was personally ashamed of my entire life, raised by a tyrant to do his bidding in his dirty work, raised by lies that had infected my brain and the feeble heart like any gullible man. I could feel the slow embrace of grief beginning to tighten its emotional grasp on me. The sadness began to pour through me. For the emotional grasp on me, the sadness began to pour through again and again, just towards the moment where I got off my horse and walked around in the field, placing my hands over my eyes, wishing to rid myself from the nightmares that had stayed inside like cancer in any human being. The suffering and the reminder that begins to push through and eat more away. To my misery, grief, and guilt was distracting me because before I even knew to react and to even act itself, to even embarrassing myself as I tripped over a log landing on my chest, first to the ground before the rest of my body could feel the impact of the brown soil ground. The pain was bad, but nowhere near the pain I caused others. But I was able to contain my grief. But the feelings of anger and indignation broke free. I rose up and yelled out many times and then unleashed my anger to the sky above. I couldn't take much more, and with no more patience, or the love from those I cared for, the action I took was that of an emotional and foolish impulse. To such intense irrationality, I removed my duster coat, my arm cuffs, and even ripped off my vest, even my own leather hat. But I took a personal moment where everything to grew absolution and such, of a haunting silence as the wind blew slightly. I took a deep breath, and I endured. I closed my eyes while staying on my knees after all the pain that I had felt, and again I still endured. Slowly I exhaled and became calm, although it was nowhere near enough. But I reclaimed my hat. But I had realized that I had matches in my pocket pants that I had kept for when I needed a light, the lanterns back in the Silver Rock. Alrighty. So we are at an hour and 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm actually going to come to a stopping point right there. So now I'm going to summarize that point. So basically, Han, Burton, or Lobo pretty much was unaware at the time that Massacre had known the secret. A member of that crew, he was sent to rob a bank and retrieve the money and gold and the riches for Massacre, ignorant to the fact that Massacre was just going to use him as a pawn after getting everything. So basically, he was summoned back into town to El Marico. Little did he realize is that Massacre and the gang had already slaughtered every single one of the, not every single person, because, again, there's going to be more about that. Massacre killed a lot of people. Not all of them, but he killed a lot of people in the town of El Marico, except for Emilia. And I will reveal one person that basically survived later on in the story. We'll get to that later on. But it was clear after Lobo figured out that Emilia was missing and that all of the town's lawmen had been dead, he realized that Massacre discovered his secret and now had Emilia hostage, and basically had killed Fenrir, his loyal dog, or his best little buddy, and he had Jackie at hostage, even though Jackie's been held hostage many times. So it finally came to a point where Lobo had confronted Massacre And basically now Massacre and the gang get into a fight with the law. Sheriff Trover, the corrupted lawman who was working with Massacre, gets killed by Jackie after Sheriff Trover tries to kill Lobo. Jackie kills Trover in the act of defending Han Burton. But now it comes to the point where Jackie has to leave. He has to run far away as he can, and basically it wasn't a request; it was an order from Han to save his life. But unfortunately, the same couldn't be said about his love Amelia, because Amelia ends up getting killed by Vulture. So Vulture ends up slitting her throat, and that basically completely breaks Lobo, whose intense hatred for Vulture, everlasting, it grows. But he's run out of town by both Massacre and Vulture, and he's forced to ride as far as he can, and he has to he's forced to contain his feelings of emotional distraught until he's made it as far as he can. He has to keep every single emotion intact until he felt it was as far as he could go, because they've, like, as it's mentioned before, that the gang itself had traveled all the way to Georgia in the span of one day. So he had to make sure that he was completely as far away and unnoticed wherever he went. But it finally came to a point where he made it up to South Dakota, and he was at the point where he couldn't take any more of what he was going through, and he decided to basically throw away some of the things from his life, except for the hat. He keeps the hat, but he took off his duster coat, he took off his arm guards, he took off his vest, he took off many things. And there's some things that he does throw away eventually, which we haven't gone through, but it's just at the point where he finally reaches South Dakota, and he's just dealing with so much now, and he's coming not exactly to the point where he's coming to terms, but he's realizing everything that he's done was all built on lies, and he's suffering a lot for it. He's going through every bit of suffering for everything that he did, and it's coming to a point where it's becoming too much for him to grasp or to bear. So this has been part 3 of our live stream. So tomorrow we're going to be doing a bit differently. We're actually going to have 2 streams tomorrow. So I got to go to church tomorrow because I'm the tech guy. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a part 4 and a part 5 stream in one day. That way we're able to at least get into the next chapter, because we're almost halfway through this part of the story. So part 3 has been done. If you guys like, though, I could in fact show you some more inspiration for where I got this story to. So I just want to make sure that we got that together. Basically, Han Burton, or Lobo, again, was inspired also from a character from Han Solo from Star Wars. So basically, he's like, again, not a smuggler, but like pretty much an outlaw in a sense. So some of you may have already seen, but let me go to a point where, and I guess in a way, Massacre is based off of a few kind of villainous characters. Jabba the Hutt is definitely one of them because he's a crime lord, but he's also based off of Dutch Vanderlyn from Red Dead Redemption 2 or Red Dead Redemption, doesn't really matter. But so I want to take a quick look at a specific scene here from A New Hope, so you can kind of see where this goes.
Right here, Jabba. Been waiting for you. You didn't think I was gonna run, did you? Look, Jabba, next time you want to talk to me, come see me yourself. Don't send one of these dwarves. Chise. Sa tauna partimalia. Kita bibliotisa. Son pastika alwano. Yana da puno.
Look, Jabba, even I get bored at sometimes. I think I had a choice, but I got a nice, easy charter now. Pay you back, plus a little extra. I just need a little more time.
Hanabuki. Bartoniana Motonaina. Si faluto enti. Yaba.
15, Jabba, don't push it.
Luto iti. Yaba matukimas. Ikmo chiko panakrin. Namito topaki tango. La choda.
Jabba, you're a wonderful human being.
Baska.
The ship's as fast as he's boasting.
There we go. So you can kind of see some aspects where I pretty much have Han Solo as a inspiration for that particular character. So anyways, this has been part 3 of the stream. I do appreciate for anyone that came out. It's fine. Like I said, the main aspect of this is just to get the recording done. And if people are ever interested in seeing it, I will actually keep that available. And then once the streams have been completely done for the story, like once the story itself has been finally presented, I will link every single one of those, and I will actually get thumbnails made for those particular streams, so that way we actually got something set up. So I do appreciate you guys coming out. For anyone that showed up at all, it's all cool. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and we will begin part 4 and 5 tomorrow. I will give that a try. I don't expect people to be there for the early part. It's probably going to be about maybe 1-ish or 2-ish, and we'll probably pick off part 5 at like 6 or 7-ish. So we'll try it that way. That way we've got a lot of ground to cover in terms of the story, and I can show a little bit more some inspirational footage and some music that kind of got me into this idea to begin with. So anyways, thank you guys very much for part 3 to have me tell part of the story too. So you guys have a wonderful night, and we will begin 2 parts tomorrow. Thank you guys, and you have a wonderful day.